It's time for some common sense, and there's only one man I can think of to talk to about that right now, and it is Alex Salmond, former First Minister of Scotland, leader of the Alba Party, of course. A bit of, shall we say, excitement north of the border about a few stories that have broken, not least the SNP apparently being blamed for independence campaign's failings. Alex, a very good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon, Mike. I'm on the edge of my seat about these giant rodents.
Yes. Well, I don't think they've made it up north. They're not keen on the cold weather up there, but they're definitely down here. Now, apparently...
I'm sure, Mike, you'll be stalwart in your defence of Prince Harry as usual when you get onto that.
Of course. Absolutely right. Well, why wouldn't I be? Ian Dommett, not a name I know, I must say, is claimed that senior figures in the SNP, including Nicola Sturgeon and Peter Murrell, have used funding and polling data to boost their own political agenda rather than the push for independence. Well, I think you and I have discussed this before. Why is he only saying it now?
Well, it's quite interesting. I mean, looking back to the 2014 campaign, there's two ways to look at it, obviously. You can say, well, it was a failure in the sense that Scotland didn't win independence. That's fair enough. Or alternatively, you can say, well, actually, it took the independence support from 27% to 45%. It allowed the SNP to sweep the Labour Party out of the dominant position in Scottish politics, which they'd occupied for 50 years. And set Scotland fair for the future. I actually think that Ian Dommett, played a valuable role in the campaign, but I'm always struck by the number of people now who say they were key strategists in the Yes campaign of 2014, and they're all over the place in Scotland. Now, an interesting thing about that is that, of course, unless it was kind of regarded as something of a success, people wouldn't be trying to, say how important they were in it.
Right.
Now, don't let me wrong. I mean, I'm not saying people didn't play important roles. Of course they did. But by and large, I think the balance would be that the Yes campaign of 2014 transformed Scotland, transformed it for the better, and basically the last 10 years of the eclipse of the Labour Party have been as a result of what happened during the Yes campaign. So yeah, sure, no doubt Ian was fighting with Peter Murrell or whatever else was going on. But the essence of the campaign, while it didn't succeed in its objective, nonetheless was transformational in terms of the future of Scotland.
But which then takes you on, I suppose, to the next bit, which should have been equally transformational when Nicola Sturgeon took over from you as First Minister. She should have then moved that agenda further on, surely, which she kind of failed to do, because by the time she stepped down, it didn't appear that there were more people who wanted independence than there were in 2014.
Well, that's. I mean, I read the Ian Dommett's interview, and he actually makes the point. You see that back in 2012, when the Yes campaign started, support for the SNP was approaching 50%. So, and support for independence, as he put it, was at 27%. So it was quite natural in terms of the first stage of the campaign, which was to try and persuade people who were prepared to back the SNP if they would also please back independence as well. Now, I think that was largely successful, and the Yes support started to move up very, very considerably. To me, this is where I disagree with you. The second stage of the campaign, to me, wasn't so much about converting the supporters of other political parties. I think almost more important than that, although there was a big section of Labour support who believed in independence, who've never forgiven the Labour Party for siding with the Tories and Better Together. But more important to me was to try and get the campaign out to the people who are disaffected from politics, who don't normally vote, who've given up hope. And a lot of that was done because, after all, the percentage poll went to 85%. Right. We didn't quite do it. We didn't get quite enough for the people who've given up on politics or politicians or parliaments. We didn't quite reach enough of these people. And to me, that was the key to the last part of the campaign. And it was perhaps just too late in terms of the embracing of the community campaign that flourished amazingly in the summer of 2014. And perhaps, people who are used to party politics, were a bit slow to grasp that opportunity. That's an important lesson, of course, for the future.
Yeah. Was it not also true to say that in 2014 it was a kind of an idea, independence, whereas by the time you reached to sort of 2021, 22, it had to be more than that. It had to be spelt out, and I'm not sure that all the various white papers or documents that the SNP produced spelt it out sufficiently well for people to understand it and say, yeah, that all sounds good.
Well, actually, one of the criticisms of the 2014 campaign that I've seen is, we produced a 670-word white paper on every iota of independence.
Yeah, but how many people do you think actually read that?
Well, that's my point. That was one of the criticisms. For the Brexit campaign, painted a slogan on the side of a bus.
Yes.
But, I suspect...
Had the same effect.
Yeah, well, I think there's a happy medium between the two. Perhaps you can put forward a prospectus which is somewhat more detailed than the slogan on the side of a bus, but perhaps slightly less detailed than the every iota that we were keen to forward back in 2014. But you live and learn.
Yeah.
And of course, the news situation, Mike, is quite different. As I say, back in the day, 2012, support for the SNP was huge. Support for independence was more limited. We're in exactly the opposite position now. Yeah. Support for the SNP is, somewhere in the 30s with the trials and tribulations that they're having just now. Whereas support for independence, the last poll's 48% now. And, I know it, not you, because you know a lot about Scotland, but, some of your colleagues down in London are, sort of patting themselves in the back, having a guffaw, laughing at the fact that they've seen off the troublesome Scots. They should really pay attention to that 48% of people, half the country, who still believe in independence despite the difficulties that the SNP are having at the present moment.
Which brings me to the usual question, which is that, what a lot of people are saying is there needs to be a unification candidate, if you like, somebody who can take the independence mantle rather than the SNP mantle and go forward with that. I mean, I ask you the same question whenever I get you on. I mean, are you any closer to sort of finding some method of doing that, whether it's you or whether it's somebody else?
Well, I did propose at the Alba conference, the spring conference on Saturday in Inverness, which was highly enjoyable. It's a great pity you didn't manage to come yourself, Mike.
Yeah, I'm sorry. I was otherwise engaged, I'm afraid.
You'd have been so well received.
Well, one of these days I'll come. I'll be back.
Well, I'll hold you to that.
Yeah.
But the point as I was making is, look, maybe given this circumstance where yes support's so high and SNP support's much lower, it's time for the Yes movement to declare its own UDI from not just the SNP, but from all political parties.
Yeah.
Because there's all multifarious Yes groups, the think tanks, the activist group. When you last spoke to me in Glasgow Green, if I remember right, a week past Saturday, when with that alternative small celebration you were having in London at the coronation, there's 20,000 people rallying for independence in Glasgow Green. Now, what I think is there's a lot of activism, there's a lot of effort, there's a lot of the think tanks, the policy work going on, and perhaps if we can bring the Yes movement together, independent of any political party, and give it a life of its own, then there's two big advantages. One is that sense of unity, which you rightly point to, but the second, of course, is if you do that, then the case and the cause of independence, which is much bigger than any political party, whether it be SNP or Alba or Greens or whoever, the cause of independence won't be affected by the difficulties that any political party suffers from.
Indeed. A couple of great quotes from you from Scotland this week, both from Nicola Sturgeon, a piece in the Herald this week, where she says that she underestimated the polarisation of Scottish politics, which is hard to believe for somebody who was such a good operator as she was. But my favourite one was when she said that the period since her leaving office, in her words, hasn't unfolded exactly as I anticipated.
Well, Nicola hitherto hasn't been a master of understatement, but nonetheless, that's an interesting perspective. The question of polarisation is quite interesting because there's two aspects to polarisation. One is the subjects that you embrace to put forward as a government, and frankly, if you're putting forward self-identification, here's the controversial subject. I mean, every time it's mentioned on TalkTV, I mean, you're moderate compared to, Piers Morgan has apoplexy.
Yes.
Every time it's mentioned, that to be...
Well, he's not a happy bunny at the moment, given what's happening in North London at the Emirates Stadium.
Yeah, let's forgive him that. But so the subjects, self-identification, trial without jury, the fishing consultation at the present moment, which is ridiculous, basically. The saying to the fishing community, right, we're going to take 10% of Scotland and you're not allowed to do anything there anymore. I mean, these subjects would be controversial and difficult, even if you're putting them forward with a smile on your face. And look, my advice to Humza is to take that agenda and get rid of it, dump it, clear the decks, because you can't win against London by dividing Scotland.
No.
You've got to unite Scotland against London. And the second thing, Mike, is there are ways to take forward controversial subjects. I mean, go back 10 years again, equal marriage. Now, equal marriage, which is generally accepted by every kind of sensible person now, is the right thing to have, equality for everyone. But back 10 years ago, when I introduced it, it was quite a controversial subject. So, basically, you try and go out your way when you're introducing a difficult, controversial subject where people have different views, to consult people to the nth degree, to have endless meetings, to listen to all the concerns quite properly. And then eventually, if you do it that way, sometimes you can take the debate into calmer waters. Now, you only do that, in my opinion, if it's something really worth doing. And I thought that equal marriage was something that was really worth doing. I'm not at all certain that upsetting the fishing community, having every lawyer in Scotland going on strike to defend trial by jury or self-defense identification are sensible things to be embarking on. And my advice to Humza, clear these decks, for goodness sake. Even if you put them forward with the broadest smile you could imagine, they'll still be very difficult, divisive issues.
Yes, I suspect he's got some choppy waters ahead of him. Good to talk to you, Alex. Thank you very much indeed. Alex Salmond, former First Minister of Scotland, of course, leader of the Alba Party. He pronounces it a bit differently to me. I can't get my head around how he does that.